69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you. Live from the Lions Den Golf Club studio, here are your hosts, Mark Freeman and Weldon Braxton.
Welcome in. It is a special day on the Sports Blitz here today. Special 2-hour edition of the Sports Blitz as the Super Bowl is set. And we are looking forward to talking a little bit about the AFC and NFC championship games. Talking about the Hogs. Lost a tough one on the road at Georgia in overtime. And high school sports, plenty of stuff today. We want you to give us a call at 968-NEWS anytime today. We've got a caller coming in at 11:35, Mr. Nick Mason, Hog Sports Radio, ESPN Sports Radio 99.5 in Northwest Arkansas. Former Arkansas Razorback basketball player. He's going to give us his thoughts on the Arkansas Razorbacks' 1-3 start to SEC play. Welcome in, Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter, and Weldon, man, we've got so much stuff to do today that I just decided today would be the day to break in the 2-hour show.
Yeah, going a special 2-hour edition today on the Sports Blitz. Mark, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to do it because you're right. We have so much going on. You look at what we saw yesterday. We knew, Mark, all week that we would have some big-time conference championship games. We were not disappointed as the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks won their respective championship games, and they will meet in a couple of weeks in New York. We'll have so much time to break that down. We'll look back at those games in today's show and tell you what we think and what went down. And, Mark, you touched on it. Arkansas Razorback basketball. I know it's painful. I know it's painful for you to even think about or talk about, but, that's why we're here. We have to look at why the Arkansas Razorbacks cannot win a game away from Bud Walton Arena, why Mike Anderson has only won 2 of his 26 SEC road games, and those 2, of course, coming against the Auburn Tigers. We got to look at that. What's wrong with this team? We're going to talk to Nick Mason about that, as you mentioned, but certainly a hot topic today in the natural state.
And today's CrossFit Russellville poll question, you can answer it on Facebook.com/SportsBlitz. You can find either one of us on Twitter at Real Mark Freeman, at Weldon Braxton, WeldonBraxton.
That's right.
You got a fancy name there. We have to spell it off for folks. But we love to hear from you guys on Twitter. I've got a guy from Seattle that's going back and forth at one of my opinions about Richard Sherman. We'll talk about him too today.
Definitely.
So much stuff to talk about today. But today's CrossFit Russellville poll question, we want you to answer what stood out most to you about the AFC and NFC championship game performances yesterday. Was there a particular person whose performance exceeded your expectations? It was a little underwhelming. What about those games stood out to you so much that we could talk about? And we will for 2 hours. We're here from 11 to 1. Again, give us a call at 968-NEWS. That's 968-6397. And aside from a couple of callers, I think Brad Caldwell is going to call in. We are going to be wide open today, so let us know what you're thinking about, and we'll talk with you about that. But let's start real quickly with our Peters Family Living local sports look. I want to talk with Nick Mason a little bit later on about high school basketball around the state because he's up there in Northwest Arkansas. He follows Bentonville. I think he's even on the Bentonville broadcast, if I'm not mistaken, sometime. So he gets to see a lot of Malik Monk, a future, hopefully, Arkansas Razorback, but a future Division I athlete, Division I basketball player nonetheless. And he knows some of the better teams in the state. He's from Jonesboro, so he's seen one of the better 6A teams in the state, so he can shed a little light on what the Russellville Cyclones have done so far this year. They're playing in that tough conference, and Nick pays a little attention to North Little Rock and some of those schools, so I'm looking to see what he thinks about Russellville's chances in the 6A. It's a loaded 6A, so they're going to have a tough time of it in the playoffs there. They got a taste of it on Friday night as they fell to Little Rock Parkview on the road. It's cool, though. I saw Tony Jones, and now I know this doesn't have anything to do with the game, but I saw that he tweeted something after the game, and it showed me the resiliency and the resolve of a 17, 18-year-old kid. And actually, I think Tony's a junior, so he may even be 16. And how they can just sort of flush one game. And it was a bad game for the Cyclones, a good game for the Patriots. But he's talking about how he was going to have a talk with somebody in upper management at Chick-fil-A because they forgot his Polynesian sauce. So the Cyclones, they started 2-0 with 2 big buzzer beater wins in conference play. Fall to Little Rock Parkview, one of the top 2 to 3 teams in the state overall. It's something that you're going to have to learn from, and we talked about it on Friday. If the threes aren't falling for Russellville, they're going to be in bad shape. It seems like that was sort of what happened on Friday night.
Yeah, Mark, it was a tough one for the Cyclones Friday night. We sat up here, throughout the week and particularly on Friday, and we talked about how Russellville, may struggle in some things they would need to do to try to keep themselves in the game. Unfortunately, they were not able to do that, but they still have 2 conference wins. It's only 1 loss. They're still right in the mix. You said it. They're in the tough Class 6A, so obviously even when they get to the postseason, they'll be challenged. But I got to give a shout-out to the Lady Cyclones. I mean, heavy underdogs. I mean, we talked about the possibility, we didn't, but there was a thought that Russellville Lady Cyclones may lose by 30-plus points. They hung right in there with one of the best teams in the state, the Lady Patriots from Little Rock Parkview. Had chances in different times to pull it off. They came up just short, but I think that's huge for that program to stay on the floor with Little Rock Parkview as they get better.
Man, they're such a young team, the Lady Cyclones. Last year, a funny story, I played a little ball with their point guard, and I can't for the life of me remember her name, Maddie. I think you were there that day. Maybe you weren't. At the Hughes Center, where she was in there, and I guess she was a 10th grader, and she came in like a bulldog, man. She was playing with the guys, and she got her tooth chipped. She got busted hard with an elbow, and she got her tooth chipped, and she waited till the end of the game to go do anything about it. She was just playing, and she was just, she didn't even cry or anything. So they got some tough girls, some young talent, and going back a couple of years, they're in the state championship game against Little Rock Parkview, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they had a squad of 6 seniors.
Yeah.
And they haven't quite been able to bounce back because, man, there's something to be said for experience, and a lot of these girls haven't been able to play a whole lot. And we'll talk about Clarksville here in a minute, and I'm interested to see how they're going to do next year when they've got Freddie and Kendrick Lee, who've played for 4 years, and he started as freshmen. Now Freddie in tournament action, but Kendrick all year. Jaron Thompson, another guy who's played for 4 years, and then you're going to have guys next year who have literally not stepped on the floor since 9th grade, and they're going to be asked to contribute in a big way. So the Russellville Lady Cyclones sort of starting to overcome that, and at least they're getting a little confidence about them because last week, they had a rough go of it playing Fort Smith Northside, one of the best teams in the country year in and year out. Just a national power for the last decade, and then playing Little Rock Parkview, another squad who's just, loaded down with talent. Got a lot to, like you said, a lot to take our hats off to the Lady Cyclones of Russellville. Moving on to Clarksville, they got a 73-51 win over Shiloh Christian, their 39th consecutive conference win. Going back to the 4A4 conference, they went undefeated in the conference for 2 years. This is their second year in the 5A West, have yet to lose a conference game. I understand that, it all goes away if they don't win a state championship, and people don't remember that. But going for their 40th win in a row, Tuesday night home against Valonia. Then they traveled to Harrison to the Spook House on Friday night, one of the most anticipated 5A games of the entire season so far.
Yeah, what was that Shiloh Christian score again?
73-51.
73-51. So, again, not a surprising performance. You talked about it on Friday. Shiloh Christian they didn't have much for Clarksville. And, as the Panthers get ready, got Valonia, and then, of course, the big one against Harrison in the Spook House. And, this should be a really good one because, normally, and this is kind of what television likes to do, and this isn't television, but a lot of times when you look at the big-time ESPN games, the games they feature, they like when the favorite or the better team is playing on the road against a team who's still good but not quite as good. I can tell you this. Arkansas in Rupp Arena would not have been on Super Tuesday. ESPN would not have scheduled that on Super Tuesday because I think we all understand what's Arkansas has when they go to Rupp. Not saying the disparity between Clarksville and Harrison's that big, because Harrison's a really good team. Clarksville, I would favor them as a little bit better, but still, you have Clarksville, the slight favorite, at least in my opinion, going on the road, so that should even up things even more. Talking about a really good game when that one comes up.
And that's a big game coming up in the 5A West, as a lot of people are talking about Harrison, and the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette has them ranked above Clarksville in the 5A rankings. Part of that's because of their resume, and they deserve it. They've beaten Russellville when Clarksville sort of had a chance to get to play Russellville in the Cyclone Classic, lost to Camden Fairview and didn't get that opportunity, and then Russellville blows them out. So you can see where Harrison would be, based on resume, ranked ahead of Clarksville. Of course, they played twice last year, and Clarksville won both games. But this Harrison team beat Jacksonville already as well. That's the 5A defending state champ. So they've got a good resume going for them right now. They beat Branson, another bigger team from Missouri. So they've got a good resume going for them right now in Harrison, and traveling on the road. It's never easy to play on the road anywhere, but especially at places like Alma and Harrison, where it's a rowdy crowd. You can almost guarantee. Go to YouTube and Google on YouTube. YouTube, Harrison student section, Harrison, Arkansas student section, Spook House, whatever you have to do to find it. They've got some very creative and interesting things that they do for opposing teams. It's just stuff that they'll do during the starting lineup, stuff that they'll do during the game just to mess with your team. Now, I saw them do one thing where they had some guy riding a wave, and he's on like a cardboard box from the top of the student section, and he rides down, and they're like acting like a wave, and they're holding them up, and it was interesting to me. It was just fun how they put so much work into it. So they create a big home court advantage for their team, and it's going to be a great game on Friday night for the Clarksville Panthers against the Harrison Goblins. They're in Harrison. And then also in the 4A4 action, got some information about the Pottsville Apaches. Got a 63-48 win over Waldron. Coach Shane Thurman, he sent in his information, and he said they were down 9 points in the third quarter, which is kind of surprising to me because, as we talked about before, on Friday, Hunter Ball is his name, from Waldron, big man inside, was going to be an advantage, but I didn't know if Waldron had anybody to guard Michael Perry and Travis Cole. Turns out they really didn't. Michael Perry, 20 points, 18 points for Travis Cole. Lots of guys contributed in the game, but as Coach Thurman said, they were down in the third quarter by 9, and he said these guys just don't have any quit in them. The momentum swung in the closing minutes of the third quarter when we made some hustle plays, got some steals, and scored some transition baskets, and he said in the fourth quarter we did a great job spreading them out, working the clock, and seizing the opportunities when they gambled. He credited Anthony Freeman, who made a big contribution tonight, he said, in his role off the bench. So a good performance for the Pottsville Apaches to bounce back and get to 3-2 in 5A or in 4A4 action, just a couple games behind undefeated Maumelle, undefeated in conference Maumelle, and one loss Subiaco. Dardanelle sits at 2-3 in the 4A4, and Dover sits at 0-3 as far as teams in our coverage area. And then on the girls' side, the Pottsville Apaches and Dover Pirates, both undefeated, 5-0 Pottsville, 4-0 Dover, 2-3 Dardanelle. So we've got some conference action coming down the pike that's going to be pretty interesting, especially on the girls' side when Pottsville and Dover play undefeated. But you've got Pottsville, who we mentioned earlier, went to Subiaco, went to Maumelle to start the conference slate. Well, they're going to have those return trips later on. So Pottsville's setting themselves up for a chance, at the end of the conference season when they'll be hitting their stride, hopefully, and they'll be able to make a run at the 4A4 conference championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you said, Mark, great conference action going on, in the River Valley. And, when you listed off those teams, it kind of got me to thinking because, as you've talked about before, we hear a lot about the Russellville Cyclones, a lot about Pottsville. And, some people at home may be wondering, you say this all the time, well, what about my team? Well, send your information to Mark. I just felt like it was a good time to remind people of that because, obviously, we'll cover the teams. We'll talk about the teams we get information on. We love the Dardanelles and the Dovers and the Hectors of the world, but, send your information to Mark and he'll get a story up. I've never known you, Mark, to turn a story down. So I'm sure if you send something in, write up a little story and some stats, you'll put it up for him.
Most definitely. We talked about Hector on Friday as they had 4 players sign letters of intent to play football at Lyon College in, other part of Arkansas, other side of Arkansas, excuse me. 4 guys from one team going to play college football for the same team is a pretty big deal, and it was very impressive. We appreciated the Hector administration having us out, and like Weldon said, email mark@rivervalleyleader.com with your information. The reason we have more on Russellville, Clarksville, and Pottsville is because they send in their stuff, and we try to make our way to several games a year, well, at least one of everybody of each season, and we try to get as much information on each one as possible. So coming down the stretch, if you want us to cover your team, just give us some information or tell your coach, your athletic director, administration to send mark@rivervalleyleader.com the information that you would like for us to share about your local team, and we would love to have that. So we've got AFC and NFC championship game rundowns right after this break. We're going to have Nick Mason on following our second break, a jam-packed 2-hour Sports Blitz show today. We want you to be a part of it. Call 968-6397 to get in on the action.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
The Super Bowl is set and the Super Show is underway.
That's right.
Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Laster in the Cogswell Motors Studios. Seattle, 23-17 winners in the late game last night on Fox over San Francisco to reach the Super Bowl out of the NFC, and in the AFC, Denver beats New England 26-16. An incredible day of football to set up what promises to be a very, very good Super Bowl, and it prompts our poll question today, our CrossFit Russellville poll question. What stood out to you the most about the AFC and NFC championship game performances yesterday? Was there an individual performance? Was it the performance of one particular team, unit, or whatever? What stood out to you the most about that game? about those games. We'll ask that question. We'll answer that question later on today. But Weldon, man, it was such a good day of football. And last night's game, I had it 21-20 San Francisco, a 1-point win for the 49ers. And if that pass is an interception, but it's caught for a touchdown, San Francisco kicks the game-winning extra point, and it's 24-23. That game was just about what we expected it to be. Seattle with the 12th man, I almost gave him the 13th man too, came out on top, was able to win and reach the Super Bowl. What a game.
It was a game, Mark, and congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. I, like you, picked the San Francisco 49ers to win, primarily because I thought they were playing better football coming into the game, and I thought all things being equal, they were a better football team. I'm not wavering from that one bit. I think San Francisco on a neutral field is at least a touchdown better than Seattle. I'm sorry, I just feel that way. But Seattle, they did the job during the regular season, earning themselves home field advantage. Look, they feel like they were a Super Bowl team last year had they not have had to go to Atlanta in the playoffs last year. They rectified that. You get home field advantage and you're able to go to the Super Bowl. But I look at this game, Mark, and all last week I talked about field position and how important it would be to secure field position, not put yourself in a bad situation. Conservative calls on fourth down as far as punting and going for it. That's what we saw. That's what I expected. But in the end, Colin Kaepernick and company turned the ball over 3 times in the second half. One led to a touchdown. Some of the others led to points for Seattle. I question this Seattle offense from an explosive standpoint and ability to get big plays, and I think they were bailed out by San Francisco's mistakes, and I said that's what could not happen. But I look at this game, and I want to talk about the 49ers because they're a team that I've essentially fallen in love with over the last 3 years. I love Jim Harbaugh. I love the culture he's built. I love that franchise.
You love Greg Roman.
I do love me some Greg Roman. He should be a head coach somewhere, although he's not. In fact, at this point, I hope Greg Roman doesn't become a head coach because that means he was going to Cleveland, and I don't want him to be the coach of Cleveland. But I feel like San Francisco's been the best team in football for at least the last 2 years, maybe even the last 3 years, ever since Jim Harbaugh got to town. And they haven't been able to win a Super Bowl yet. 2 NFC championship games and 1 Super Bowl appearance, haven't been able to win it all. Mark, it just tells me it takes a degree of luck to win the Super Bowl. Not saying you have to be a lucky bad team. You still have to be a good team, but you need some breaks to win a Super Bowl. They didn't get those breaks. Remember the pass interference call in the Super Bowl last year, or that wasn't called.
The lack thereof.
Yeah, lack thereof. You look at this game yesterday. The roughing the punter call that was not called. They called running into the punter, which was just a 5-yard penalty, still fourth down. Roughing would have been a first down, automatic first down. You look at that fourth down play Seattle had, Russell Wilson, they run 3 verticals. He just chunks it in the end zone. San Francisco had opportunities, but Seattle just caught the ball in a bunch of traffic for a touchdown. And, of course, the play where Navarro Bowman wrecks his leg. He recovers the fumble clearly. The officials didn't see it, so they didn't give San Francisco the ball. Just tough breaks San Francisco didn't get, but in the end, I give Seattle credit.
And we have to do a little bit of good talk about Seattle. I'm not a big Seattle fan, and I'll tell you why here in a little bit. Some stuff that I saw yesterday I just wasn't a big fan of. But I think this game, like you mentioned, came down to one thing and one thing only. Look, total yards, 308 yards for San Francisco, 308 yards for Seattle. Exactly the same amount of total yards. So, San Francisco did what they wanted to. They went on the road and they played them. Everything's even. They outrushed them, which San Francisco is a great rushing team. They want to run the ball. Colin Kaepernick ran for 130 yards. He was great outside of 3 turnovers. That was the difference in the game. 3 huge turnovers by Colin Kaepernick, 2 interceptions, and a fumble lost. One of the interceptions, Jim Harbaugh, I know he's just taking up for his guy. He said that he never saw the cornerback. If he didn't see the cornerback, he didn't see his receiver because the cornerback was literally standing right in front of his receiver. And then the other one was the tip ball at the end of the game that lost it, I guess you could say that won it because it was a great play by Richard Sherman to make that tip.
And he let you know about it, too.
We'll talk about Richard Sherman here in a little bit as well, but the 3 turnovers, man, it killed San Francisco. And really, all that said, Navarro Bowman, can we just talk for just a second about one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in all of sports? How do you have review of something and just review it in a sport in general and make certain plays not reviewable. Oh, well, we said that he recovered it, that the other team recovered it, but we won't be able to review. Well, you got it wrong, or there's a good possibility that you got it wrong. Why wouldn't you go review it? The replay showed Navarro Bowman on his back with the ball and a shattered leg, and then Marshawn Lynch appears from the pile with it. The guy might have been passed out from shock and pain down the pile and just getting jumped on by 77 people. So why can't you go back and review that? I know that's beside the point, but why in the world would you not be able to review everything in football?
No, you're totally right, Mark. And I just want to speak to that real quick because I get the initial reasoning from what I understand is that they don't review it is because usually when a fumble is recovered or something like that, it's a huge scrum. They don't want to take the time to try to pick through video of a scrum in which they can't see. But there's still no harm in at least reviewing it. Look, if it comes back inconclusive, it's inconclusive.
Exactly.
No big deal, just move on. But in the event that you do have a conclusive and clear-cut recovery, it would come in handy. So I agree with you on that.
They do the confirmed or the play stands,
yeah.
Whether they have conclusive evidence or not that it is confirmed, the call we made is confirmed, or it's reversed, or it stands. Those that don't understand the difference, confirmed means we saw exactly what we called is right. Stands means we can't change the call because it was inconclusive, and reversed, obviously they changed their mind because what they saw was the opposite of what they called. So why would you not be able to review it? And then if you can't come up with a conclusive answer, that's fine. But Jim Harbaugh is standing over there with the review flag in his hand, and he said, the challenge flag, and he says, "I'm going to throw this," and they say, "Don't do it. It's just going to cost you a timeout, and we're not going to review it anyway." So it's frustrating to me to see that, but that didn't matter because at the end of the day, the next play, Marshawn Lynch fumbles on fourth down, so Seattle, turned the ball over, and it was one of those ball don't lie type situations. And then I guess the ball did lie because Colin Kaepernick threw a pick on the next series. So San Francisco was not able to pull it out. Let's switch gears and flip back to the Seattle Seahawks, who did win the game, and Marshawn Lynch, a 40-yard touchdown run, and just an incredible performance by Russell Wilson, 215 yards, only a 38 QBR, but 104 passer rating, did what he had to do to win the game. 22 rushes for 109 yards for Marshawn Lynch and a touchdown there. The Seattle offense was just good enough.
That's right, Mark. And when we talk about the Super Bowl matchup here later on in the show, I'm going to bring back that point because, look, I want to say some good things about Seattle. You're right. We'd have to give them credit. But at the same time, I just can't ignore what I saw in terms of San Francisco not winning the game. And Seattle, look, Seattle defensively, they were great. We know they have a big-time defense. We know their secondary is hands down the best in football. Richard Sherman, the best corner in the league. They have so much speed and athleticism throughout that defense. They did a great job. But I just look at the San Francisco 49ers. I look at Colin Kaepernick, who has got to take that next step this offseason. Last year, he burst on the scene during the year, of course, took over for Alex Smith. He was really getting a lot of his money or a lot of his action on the read option. They ran a lot of option last year. This year, they came into the year saying, we got to protect him. He's going to be the starter for the full season this year. We got to take out some of the options. So they didn't even run it much this year. They were going to try to convert him into being a conventional drop back passer. Well, you can do that, but he has to make those steps. So right now they're in no man's land because they're not using his best option, which is to run the option to keep him healthy. Understandable, but he still hasn't developed as a drop back passer to where you can make him exclusively that type of quarterback. His mechanics are still questionable. I think physically he's as good as anybody. His arm strength to make throws going across his body is big time. He has to get better mechanically. He has got to get better at reading a defense. I told you this before the show we talked about. Seattle doesn't do a whole lot coverage-wise. They pretty much run a basic 3-deep defense. If you understand how it works, essentially you got your two corners playing deep, you got your free safety playing deep, and on the strong side you've got your strong safety rolling down in the curl to flat area. That was Cam Chancellor, that interception. He was rolling down as a strong safety. He gets under the throw. You have got to be able to see that. That's quarterbacking 101 from back in high school. I love this San Francisco roster, but for them to get it done, Colin Kaepernick, you got to take the next step in the passing game. Got to.
The defensive backs, and we're going to talk here in a little bit about the Super Bowl. I want to talk in the second hour about the Super Bowl as Nick Mason's going to come on with us here in just a few minutes. So we'll switch gears to basketball, but we'll come back to the AFC Championship game, and we'll preview the Super Bowl between the Seattle, I almost called them Supersonics, Seahawks.
I see, yeah.
And because I love me some NBA basketball, and I love the Supersonics back in the day. But the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. But I have to give some credit to the defensive backs for Seattle. My goodness, these guys now, for how good they are, I don't like them because they're roided up guys who fail all these drug tests and performance enhancing drugs and junk like that. And you can see that these guys look like bionic men out there. Cam Chancellor, 11 tackles, 2 passes defense. Bobby Wagner, I think he didn't. He had 15 tackles there for the Seattle defense. And they've just got, and then you got guys like Richard Sherman who they didn't pick on all day. They were basically, I'm not saying they were afraid of him, but they knew where he was. And it was not necessarily to the extent of Deion Sanders, but it was sort of like what people used to do to Nnamdi Asomugha. It was just like he had 7 tackles on the year or something like that. Nobody ever threw it at him. And it was sort of that way with Richard Sherman. And then the one time they pick on him, he gets that knockdown and causes an interception. So a lot of credit in this game goes to the Seattle Seahawks defensive backs because, like we said, the offense did just enough. And although Russell Westbrook, what in the world? Russell Wilson was 16 of 25, and he was efficient. Marshawn Lynch rushed for 100 yards. It's really this whole Seattle team predicated on defense.
Yeah, I mean, they really are. And you mentioned they did just enough to be able to get the job done. They made some incredible plays. I would attribute some of it to a degree of luck and being fortunate because of the field position and because of just being able to chunk the ball on 4th down in the end zone and come away with a touchdown. I mean, that's all that happened. Look, Seattle's a team, you said, they're built on their defense. They're only going to go as far as their defense takes them. Offensively, I can't see them coming up with anything magical between now and the Super Bowl. Getting Percy Harvin back will help, but you look at a Golden Tate, you look at a Baldwin, those guys. I mean, they had a chip on their shoulder after what some of the ESPN guys had to say about them, but I don't blame the ESPN analysts. I mean, as Chris Carter said this morning, if you were so big time, they wouldn't have paid Percy Harvin all that money to come in. Obviously, they felt like you couldn't get the job done. You came up big in this game. You deserve some credit, but let's not act like you've been big time all year long. And I still think that receiving core is a question mark going into the Super Bowl. Look, you have Zach Miller as your tight end. Zach Miller runs about a 5'8" 40. Not a dynamic athlete. You got receivers who are mediocre. I still think it's a question. But we'll talk about that when we get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we'll look a little bit more at that game. One of the things that I want to talk about with the Seattle Seahawks is how different a team they are on the road. That's a big, big deal. And because obviously it's not a true road game, but they're across the friggin' country from where the 12th man is. That's going to have an impact. So I do, though, want to talk about how I immediately after the game last night, I was rooting for San Francisco for a couple reasons. One, I like the way that they're put together. And two, I don't like the way the defensive backs from Seattle will play against the Denver Broncos and my Peyton Manning. So I was wondering how in the world that Denver was going to win the game. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos and their win in the AFC Championship game momentarily. But we're joined now by Mr. Nick Mason, ESPN Radio 99.5 Hog Sports Radio there in Northwest Arkansas. He's got a show Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Jason's texting me here. Nick, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Man, we enjoyed following your stuff on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle so that we can get people to following you right now before we even get started?
It's _Nick 5000. That's _Nick 5000.
All right. We're going to talk, obviously, with a former Razorback, we're going to talk about Hog basketball. We've got several questions that I think are coming off of this initial statement. And, I know from following my Twitter that I'm a little frustrated, a little upset. What in the world is up with this team?
Right now, I mean, that's the $1 million question, and I think it comes back to Mike Anderson's style versus the players that he currently has. I know everybody wants Mike Anderson to draw up plays at the end of the game and call timeouts and change up his style, change up his defense, and he's not going to do that because in his 2 previous stops at Missouri and UAB, he's had a lot of success. Difference has been in those stops he's had his type of players, he's had his type of guards that can create. And whenever you're out there and you're not running any plays at all, you can't have the type of talent that he has on the team right now. He has nobody right now who can create for others or who can create their own shot. And when you're out there not running any plays like Mike Anderson is known for doing, it's just, I mean, you're going to be very frustrated as a fan base, and that's why they haven't been able to win on the road.
Well, Nick, Weldon Braxton here. Glad to have you on. Well, I guess that brings me to my question. If you're Mike Anderson, you do understand that you don't have the players you would like to have, a true point guard, players who can create off the dribble and things of that sort. So are you surprised that he hasn't really taken it upon himself? I made this point to Mark to say, okay, I don't have those kind of guys. Maybe I need to run some more sets or do some things from the bench until I get those types of guys.
You know, I'm not surprised because once you've had as much success as he's had being a head coach, you become kind of stubborn. And he's made a lot of money. He's top 15 in the country right now, being paid a little over $2.3 million a year. So I'm not surprised that he hasn't changed. And in my personal opinion, I wouldn't want him to change because I wouldn't want him getting to this year and everything that's gotten him here, he throws out the door and says, you know what, I'm going to start running plays. Because if he started to do that, or I'm going to start running this type of sets, or I'm going to change my defense up. If he starts to do that, I don't think that Arkansas would have as much success as they'd have thus far in the season. So I think that this is going to be an ongoing conversation until he brings in the type of recruits that can play the up and down style, or until he brings in enough shooters. Because at Missouri, he either had the talent or he had enough shooters to surround guys to where whenever you dribble, drive, and penetrate, you can kick it out. And whenever you're surrounded by 3 or 4 guys shooting 40 to 50% from the three-point line, then you don't have to run too many plays.
I want to get your thoughts on Anton Beard, future Arkansas Razorback, and a point guard who a lot of people are I don't want to say that they're comparing him to Corey Beck, but they're hoping that he can be a guy like that in the future. I want to say, though, I'm with you as far as the way that Mike Anderson coaches the defensive side of the ball and effort. There is no question that there has been improvement with this team, but 3 straight overtime games, 2 of those losses, one against Florida in frustrating fashion, one against Georgia in frustrating fashion in overtime on the road, 2 road wins in his entire SEC career with Arkansas. I know that you're talking about talent, but does it sort of strike you as that this team has no offensive identity, or is it more to you just about the players out there? Because it seemed like, man, these guys are 20 to 30-point scorers in high school, and then when they get into college, it's just like they don't know how to run a motion offense. I don't know if it's just something that me, as from a fan perspective, I look at and I don't understand it the right way, or, I mean, shed some light on this these offensive ineptitudes for me.
Well, see, and I think you hit it on the head. It's about the identity. Because right now, if I ask both of you, what is this team's identity? Not just the offensive side, but what is this team's identity? Then you probably say, well, I saw a couple of games to where they were a man-to-man team, and then a couple of games they were a pressing team. A couple of games they had 5 guys who thought they were a three-point shooting team. So right now, I think that that's another problem. The fact that this team doesn't have any identity as a complete team, and it takes different forms and they change. So on the road at times, if you don't have any identity and you face adversity, that's when you start getting guys going, trying to play one-on-one, guys taking ill-advised shots, and that's a big issue, and that's something that Mike Anderson is going to have to deal with. But having that team identity, I think right now, and I hate to say it, but it's too late to try to form some type of team identity this far along in the season. That's something that has to be formed prior to you getting into the season, whether it's on the recruiting trail, the type of guys you recruit, or the fact that you've told them over and over and over again, this is what type of basketball team we're going to be. So right now, I think it's almost too late to change this team's identity.
And, Nick, you may be right. And, we look at this Arkansas team as far as their season. Tough game against Tennessee on the road coming up. They're staring at a 1-4 SEC start. If things keep going in this direction, Arkansas will probably miss the NCAA tournament. It'll be 3 years in for Mike Anderson and no NCAA tournament appearances. What will his job status be? Will he stay for a 4th year? Will he make it? Or will his seat be hot? What do you think his status will be if he doesn't make the tournament after 3 years?
That's actually a great question. I'm glad you asked me that question because I know I'm going to address that today on my afternoon show. There's nothing Mike Anderson can do this year outside of pulling a Bobby Petrino to get him fired. But on the court, there is nothing that he can do to get him fired. If he lost the remainder of his games, he would still be the head coach of the University of Arkansas next year. I just think that this year has to do with how much heat he's going to have on himself next season. But on the flip side of that, you can look at it like this. The very first year here, Mike Anderson didn't have a very good year. Last year, he was 2 games over 500. That was the first time Arkansas Razorbacks were over 500 in 8 to 10 years. This year, if he's able to make the NIT, which I think this is the NIT basketball team, I thought it at the beginning of the year, and I definitely think that they stamped their ticket to the NIT this past weekend after they lost to Georgia. If he's able to make it to the NIT this year, you're talking about 3 separate years where he's shown improvement in each year. So if he's able to make it to the NIT this year, and I might be crazy for saying that, I think that his job is going to be as secure as anybody's in the country, just because if you're Jeff Long, you look at the fact that what he took over and he's shown improvement every single year. So this is a big year in regards to how much heat he's going to have on him in the future. But there is nothing that he can do on the court. He can lose every single game. He can get blown out every single game, home and away from here on out. He would still be the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks going into next season.
Man, I like this level-headed approach here because I get fan mode too much. I'm just being honest. I remember '94, national championship game. Mom sending me to bed at halftime, I've been that guy for 20 years, so I've been fan mode. And I'm appreciating the other side of this here from Nick Mason. We're visiting with ESPN Radio 99.5 Hog Sports Radio there in Northwest Arkansas. Former Arkansas Razorback, got a great handle on this basketball team as you've got some friends still on the roster.
Right.
You mentioned how it might be too late this year to forge a new identity. So I wonder, will the rest of this season still, they've still got to win some games to get to the NIT. And I know you talked about their talent being an NIT level. What's the selling point to this team as far as what the coaches will tell the players to get them to, not lay down? I know that this team has been very resilient, and several teams in the past may have just quit after losses like they've endured so far. What's the selling point to this team if you can't really create a new identity this late in the season?
Well, see, now, I'm the one saying that they can't get to the NCAA tournament. I think that his coaching staff is still preaching NCAA tournament. All we have to do, we have X number of games left. All we have to do is go on the road and win a couple of games. If we take care of all, because if Arkansas takes care of all their games at home, and if you're this coaching staff, now, I don't think that they can win at LSU. I don't think they can win at Tennessee. I don't think that they can win at Kentucky. But if you are this coaching staff, and if you are trying to preach to these guys, you need to hang in the fight, still have a chance of going to the NCAA tournament, then you can pull up the remaining schedule, and you can pull up the quality opponents, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky. Those will be all very quality wins. And if you can get those wins and win 12 games in conference, maybe 13 games in conference, it's still possible if you're the head coach of this basketball team talking for the rest of your team. It's still possible to get to the NCAA tournament. So I think this coaching, I don't think that the guys have quit on them. I don't think that they have laid down because it's still early in the season. There's still a bunch of games left. So I don't think they're going to have that problem unless, now, if you lose at Tennessee on Wednesday, which I think they will, you come back at home, you lose to Auburn, Missouri, then you go to LSU and lose that game, and you've lost 4 or 5 in a row. That's when I think you have to worry about this team quitting. But as long as they can take care of home court and get close in some of these road games, I don't think we have to worry about them quitting.
Nick, who on this team has surprised you? It could be a positive surprise, or it could be somebody you're disappointed in. Who would you say have been your surprises as far as players on this team?
That's another great question. As far as I'll go with the positive side first, because this has been a lot of negative so far in this interview. On the positive side, I think Kai Madden. I think his game has matured more. I know everybody likes to say, "Oh, well, he's in the gym this summer," or "He's better because he's not hanging around B.J. Marchand anymore," or "He's better because he did this or that." No, it's just the fact that now he's getting the minutes and he's getting the opportunity, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about college basketball. There are a lot of guys who are tit for tat in talent. One guy gets the opportunity, the other guy doesn't, and one guy's career takes off, and we've never heard of the other guy. So Ty Madden has really surprised me this season, just by the way his game has matured and how he's matured as a player, because, he's been suspended a couple of times. He hasn't been able to stay on the court. But here, as of lately, it seems like he stepped up and he's taken on that leadership role. Now, on the other end, I probably have to say Ricky Scott and Mardrakus Wade. Both of those guys, especially coming off of their sophomore seasons. Last year, I know that they had a slump. I thought that their slump had more to do with the fact that they were key parts of a team, and so now teams are going out there trying to stop Ricky and Mardrakus, whereas the sophomore year, guys didn't even know who they were. So I expected their senior year not to be as good as their sophomore year, because I knew they weren't going to play as many minutes, but I expected them to contribute a little bit more than what they've been doing, and I've been very disappointed in those two guys. Now, on the flip side of that, those two guys haven't played very many minutes, but it is their duty to earn those minutes in practice. So I definitely have to say that those two guys have probably been the biggest disappointment in this Arkansas Razorback basketball team.
All right, now you mentioned Kai Madden, and I've been very impressed with him, man. Going back to when he was in high school and seeing how, he knocks that Gatorade bottle over and he messes up the floor, and he was just so immature to see him now being the guy who, at the end of the game, I don't know who else I would rather have take the game-winning shot of the guy who I want the ball in his hands at the end of the game. Kai Madden, to me, is that guy. I know you mentioned him, but another guy who I think is getting a little too much, I don't want to say
I know who you're going to say.
Pressure, too much. I think I'm going a little different direction. I think you're probably talking about Michael Qualls. I'm talking about Bobby Portis. Too many people, I think, are down on him after a 4-game stretch in the SEC where, man, he is one of the better players. And I know you talked about it. Well, he needs to hit the weight room for sure. And he's not going to be a one and done. He's going to hopefully be a 2-3 year player at the very least. But Nick, could you just explain to the listeners, because you've done a very good job so far, explaining to the listeners how important Bobby Portis has been to this team and how good he has been?
Bobby Portis is very important to this basketball team. I was telling people on Twitter probably a couple of weeks ago, I'm not very high on Moses Kingsley at all, but I can make an argument that Moses Kingsley is the third or fourth most important player on this team. And people are talking about, well, you're crazy. Well, why is that? Well, because if you don't have Moses, that means Ja'Cory is your second string center, and Ja'Cory cannot stop any centers in the country. So if Moses is that important, how much more important do you think that Bobby Portis is as a basketball team? You're talking about a freshman that's averaging 12 points, 6.5 rebounds. If you go and look up the history, look up some of the greats, look up Joe Klein, Scott Hastings, Corliss Williamson, Ronnie Brewer, and look at their freshman numbers and then compare those to Bobby Portis. You'd be very surprised how just in the thick of things he is with those numbers. And without Bobby Portis, you're very small, because you're already small at the power forward position, playing 6'5" Landis Harris or 6'5" Cody Clark. So the only size that you actually have and that you can rely on right now is Bobby Portis. And then Bobby Portis always gets matched up on the other end with 2'6" or 2'10" athletic guys, and he's the only one really down there banging with those guys. So I've been very impressed with his production this far. And then I also think if he played alongside another 6'10" guy, I think that I think that you can add 2 or 3 more points to his points per game, and probably 1 or 2 more rebounds to his total rebound.
Yeah, and I definitely think Bobby Portis can play. I think by the time he gets to be a sophomore or junior, he'll be really good. But, Nick, you mentioned earlier something that really caught my ear, and that was an identity, and the identity of this team. And one guy whose identity, I guess maybe it was just me getting the wrong idea, but I thought Landis Harris was going to come in and be a blue-collar, 12 points, 8, 9, 10 rebound a game, just a bulldog in the paint. His game has been a little bit more on the perimeter. He's taken more outside shots than what I anticipated. Was I just way off on my expectations of Harris, or does he have some sort of identity crisis with this team?
You were a little off, but it wasn't your fault, because if you remember, everybody in the media, everybody in Northwest Arkansas, everybody in your area, everybody Central Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas, everybody just for some reason got a hold of this guy, and I guess they saw his body and the fact that he's built up like a linebacker. Then and you know how it spreads. One person with 2,000 or 3,000 Twitter followers puts out, Landis Harris is going to be a bulldog in the paint. He's going to be a man amongst boys. Then after that, it just spreads like wildfire. And I never quite got it, because I got a chance to play against this guy in high school. I got a chance to see him in high school. I can remember whenever I was on the basketball team and Coach Pepper was recruiting him as a small forward. He's always wanted to play a small forward, so I didn't quite understand where he's going to be a back to the basket, he's going to be in the paint, getting all these rebounds, he's going to be, scoring all these points with his back to the basket, because he's more comfortable out on the perimeter attacking off the bounce. So I don't think that he has an identity crisis. I just think that everybody in the media, 95% of us had it wrong from the start. And so now our expectations of him are a lot different. So whenever we see him taking a lot of jumpers, or whenever we see him out here dribbling or facing up and hanging on to the basketball, that's been his game since he's been at Central High School. We just didn't know that. And so that's why everybody's kind of low on him, because of their expectations. And I can almost take it a step further. That's why everybody's so low on this basketball team, because at the beginning of the season, you thought this was going to be an NCAA tournament basketball team. Well, right now, it looks like an NIT team, so that's why you're very low on this basketball team. The same thing with Brad Bielema and the football team. You thought Coach Bielema was going to come in and shock the world, like he said. So whenever he wins 3 games, your expectations were just way off.
Man, I'm enjoying this visiting with Nick Mason. Got one more question as far as individual players go, and then I want to look at high school basketball for just a second. I know you've been with us a little while, and I know you probably have other things to do today. But Michael Qualls makes the Sports Center top 10 number 1 play of the game against Kentucky, the game-winning dunk, shooting 43% for the season. In SEC play, though, he is shooting 19%. What does Michael Qualls have to do to get in where he fits in and to make a difference for this basketball team coming down the stretch?
Right now, Michael Qualls is an SEC athlete, but he's not an SEC basketball player. And I think that he's trying to be an SEC basketball player. He's trying to take far too many jumpers. He's taking ill-advised shots. He's taking jumpers with 2 and 3 guys on him instead of getting around the rim and to the lane. Now, some of that is on Michael Qualls, but some of the rest of that is on Mike Anderson and this coaching staff for not running any plays and not having any sets. If I was Coach Anderson, I would have 1 or 2 plays a half where either Michael Qualls is going to the rim, backdoor lob, or where I'm posting Michael Qualls up, because right now Michael Qualls plays either the 2 or the 3. So that means that there is a guard guarding him probably 75% of the time. So if you're Mike Anderson, it's not too hard to do a cross screen down screen or a down screen cross screen, post Michael Qualls up on the block and tell him to just catch him on the block, turn around, jump up, and shoot. So right now, I think he's predicating too much of his game on his jump shot, and he's not an SEC basketball player yet. He's an SEC athlete.
All right, one more question. We'll get you out of here. Nick Mason, ESPN Radio 99.5, Hog Sports Radio. They're in Northwest Arkansas. Let's look. I know you cover a lot of high school basketball. You get a good look at Malik Monk pretty often. Right. I've talked to you a little bit about Anton Beard in the past. I don't know if you've been able to see him this year. Looking forward to his career as an Arkansas Razorback. Do you think he's a guy who will fill a need? And then what has jumped out to you early on in the high school basketball season?
To answer your first question, I do feel like Anton Beard will fill a need. The problem that a lot of high school guys have coming in, if you look at Ty Madden on his high school team, if you look at Bobby Portis, Michael Qualls, even D. Wagner, those were the only division or the high Division I prospects on their team. So whenever those guys were coming out shooting 25 shots a game, whenever they get to college, they can't quite mesh with everybody else because they've been the man their whole life. Well, if you look at Anton Beard's team, he's playing with KJ Hill. The only reason that KJ Hill is not going to play in Division I basketball is because he's going to play Division I football. Yeah. He's playing with Adrian Moore. He's a top 10 talent in the state. He's playing with Kavon Allen. He's a Rivals top 25 5-star right now. So Anton Beard is playing with a lot of talent, and he still can get his. He still can score. He can rebound the basketball. He's a strong guard, so you don't have to worry about his size coming in. I like him coming in next season just because I think you can move Kai off the basketball, and I think that you can give Kai one duty, and that's Kai. Go out there, and I want you to be, like Jamal Crawford. I want you to have the, 19, 1, 1, and 1. I just want you to completely worry about all scoring. And so I think that Anton Beard will help, not because he's going to come in and score 25 points a game or he's going to get 10 assists a game, but just because you can trust putting the ball in his hands. He can handle it. He can defend on the other end. Then you can move Kai off the ball. And as far as standing out storylines that have stood out, of course, I'm in Northwest Arkansas, so I follow Northwest Arkansas basketball a lot more than the other areas. But just the storylines in Northwest Arkansas have stood out to me. You're talking about Malik Monk, the best talent in the state, him moving at the last minute and coming up to Bentonville. That instantly makes them a title contender in my eyes, because if you have a guy that can get 35 or 40 points at any given time, and trust me, I've seen Malik play 1,000 times. He can get 35 or 40 at any given time. If you have that on your team, you have an instant shot of winning a state championship. Then you're talking about Coach Boland. He's made a name for himself in Northeast Arkansas. Now he's at Harbor. Harbor doesn't have just a huge tradition recently in basketball and in winning. And then Springdale High, I mean, their backcourt with Tyreek Ecklewood and DJ Evans is as good as any backcourt in high school basketball right now. So I just think 7A West, they're not known for having a lot of basketball talent. Usually, you know, they've had Cody Burns and Michael Sanchez and one or two other individuals that have been good in the past. But right now, just the teams in 7A West can finally, in my opinion, compete with Northeast Arkansas and Central Arkansas.
Man, Nick, we're going to have you back on here pretty quickly to give us some breakdowns on Hogs and high school basketball around the state, man. We appreciate you taking time and joining us today. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That's Nick Mason, former Arkansas Razorback and host of his own sports radio show, 99.5 ESPN Radio. That's Hog Sports Radio in Northwest Arkansas. If you enjoyed his show or his visiting with us today, watch and listen to his show 4 to 6 Monday through Friday there on Hog Sports Radio, ESPN Radio 99.5. Former Arkansas Razorback opinion about this team, and it was a really good one, really level-headed, and really impressive to me to hear from him today. All right, we have got an impressive hour set up for you in the next segment. We're going to talk AFC Championship game. We're going to reset. We'll give our opinion for some Arkansas Razorback basketball talk. Plenty of stuff left on the Sports Blitz. Stay with us.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russell and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
We hope you're enjoying this Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Man, we can sit here and talk all day about Martin Luther King Jr., but we just appreciate all he did throughout his life, and we hope you're enjoying. Hopefully you've got a day off from school. My wife, they had the snow stuff, so they had to go for professional development today, but the students didn't have to be there, so we hope you guys are having a good day today. Welcome into the Sports Blitz second hour special show. Lots of stuff to talk about. Wanted to have some guests and some opportunities for you to call in and be a part of today's show. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter in the Cogswell Motors studios. We're joined now by Old School Baller on the line. He's got some thoughts. Wondered what's going on with you, Old School Baller.
Hey, what's up, guys? Just sitting here enjoying the sunshine. Sitting inside, got a kind of ear infection. Thought I'd turn you guys in. Hey, listen, I may sound a little pessimistic, but I don't entirely agree with everything that previous caller said.
Okay. What do you have? What bones do you have to pick with it?
Well, I can't tell since Anderson's been there we've made that much improvement. I know and I believe the talent level's better this year, but I don't see us playing any better, winning any more games now than his first year. We've got a little talent on the team, but he's just not getting it out of them. And I've got a question in my mind. We're supposed to be noted, Anderson and Nolan were supposed to be noted for that 40 minutes of hell in your face defense the whole game. Well, listen, to me it looks like that we have a hard time getting a shot off on offense. And the opposing team, when we're playing that 40 minutes of hell defense, they just make about 3 passes and they're open. Now, I think that used to work, but I don't know that it's very effective anymore. Opposing team can make about 3 passes and they got an open shot. And we'll get down there and pass the ball around till the time almost runs out, and we have to take an off balance shot that's not a good shot. We just don't take good shots. And I think it's coaching. I just don't know whether the way Anderson coaches is effective as it used to be. And as far as Kingsley not important, I think he's very important. Now, I know that Portis is good. He's a big, good guy, but he's slow. He's slow, guys. He don't adjust real quickly. But I think Kingsley needs more playing time. And Kyle Madden, I used to be I just couldn't say any good things about Madden at all because I watched him firsthand all through high school, and he was a thug. He didn't command my respect. But since he's got up there, he's about the only ball player that we got on the team that's got any sense that actually acts like they know how to play basketball. So I'm on the bus with him right now.
I'm
like
with you.
I'm like you. Crunch time, I want the ball in his hands. But I think we miss Mickelson, and my goodness, I think Kingsley needs to play some more. We're just putting too many eggs in Portis's basket, seems to me like.
Well, that's definitely a lot of people thinking that they're expecting too much from a guy like Bobby Portis, who, man, for all his accolades and all the things that he did in his high school career, guys, he's a freshman. He's 18 years old, and as big and tall and lanky as he is, man, he is a kid, and he has not learned. All-American.
I mean, that's what we recruited him for what he's supposed to have.
Oh no, I think he's gonna be really good.
I do too. But I think Kingsley's not too far behind him. He just needs what we need. Our inside game's not hurting us. We need a shooter. And guys, why we can't come up with a shooter, I do not know. Every team's got a shooter, but Arkansas, we hadn't had one in 10 years.
Oh, you're right. We definitely need a shoot. I think two things. Bobby Portis and Moses Kingsley need to play together. Mike Anderson spoke to that today on Twitter. I saw one of his comments from his press conference where he said those two. He said, I think those two need to play a little more together. I think you're probably right, Mike, because we're getting out-rebounded by 20 every single night, and that's why, because you don't have any bigs in there who can get a rebound, and Bobby Portis, for all his size and length, well, you mentioned it, he's kind of skinny, he's getting pushed around quite a bit, and Moses Kingsley, he's still getting pushed around a little bit for a 7-footer, even though, because he's still a freshman, but they need that size inside to get some rebounds.
Exactly. You got to have it.
They really do. And old school baller, one thing that you said that I've been saying this really for years, and I'll reiterate it now since you opened the door to it. Philosophically, I've always believed there was more of a difference in Mike Anderson and Nolan Richardson than what a lot of us gave credit for. I know in our minds, especially when we hired Mike Anderson, we wanted to just say, well, it's just going to be a continuation. We're going to pick up where we left off.
Right.
I feel like philosophically they're different. I think Mike Anderson, as funny as this sounds, I think he wants to be more refined, even though his offense doesn't look like it. I don't think he wants to play just a utter junkyard style the way Nolan Richardson did, full court press. The press isn't nearly as good as it was under Coach Richardson. I feel like Coach Anderson wants to get it done more with half court type defense and different things. So I think as a fan base, philosophically, we have to understand that what Mike Anderson does, while it's similar, it's a little bit more different than what we've been willing to acknowledge.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, old school baller, you got anything else to add?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to see if you had any more questions to add.
No, I don't. I just enjoy your show because I sure like to talk college and high school basketball.
Well, I do too. I love it, and you're welcome to call in anytime you feel the need to get fired up about something and call in and talk, man. We appreciate your call.
Okay, you guys have a good day.
You too. That's our favorite caller, old school baller. No offense to Brad and Jason and those guys. I like old school baller. He brings up a lot of good points. He's passionate about his points. One of the things that he mentioned, Nick mentioned, and I talked with you about before the show, is the lack of offensive identity. It frustrates me to no end. Guys, I'm with you. I'm fan mode here. I'm with you. I hate seeing Arkansas, like old school baller mentioned, run down the shot clock to 3 seconds and then fire up a fadeaway three, or just go in and just fling something up. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. And then, like he said, you go to the other end. Other team either runs a more fluid motion or runs a set play, gets an easy shot, and it just looks like, what in the world is going on down here? Like, to your point, though, philosophically speaking, Mike Anderson, and Nick mentioned this, wants to be more free-flowing, wants to let them think less, play more. What frustrates me, though, is at the end of the game, or in moments like Nick said, he mentioned at the beginning that he didn't think, set plays or something that Mike Anderson needed to do, wanted to do. And then he talked about Michael Qualls, and he said, I wish that sometime in the second half or sometime, early on, you would get a set play for a lob or some sort of something to get Michael Qualls going. That's all I'm talking about doing. At the end of the game against Georgia, regulation, you've got the ball and 10 seconds left. You call timeout, and you set up a play to where Kai Madden does the exact same thing he did against Kentucky. Just dribble it down, wait till there's no time left, fire it up. That's what your play is. That's what you draw up. To me, you're getting paid $2 million. You can draw up a play in a game, one play. Yeah. I'm not saying you have to do it all game long, because that does frustrate guys who are, wanting to get up and down. And it's just one play.
And I'll say this, Mark, normally when you do go to fan mode, I completely go to the other side. But this particular time, I don't think it's just a fan thing. I think it's a coaching thing as well. I think you can look at it from the same perspective. I think you and the other fans are well within their right to have questions and be critical, because, when you look at this team, they don't. And I understand what Nick was talking about as far as what Mike Anderson wants to do from a free-flowing standpoint. Doesn't want to bog the team down with sets. I understand what he's saying. What I'm thinking, though, what I'm saying is, you don't have the roster to be able to pull that off, because in order to be, an all-out motion team, let guys move around and screen on their own, you need guys who can shoot the basketball. You need guys who can post up, or you need guys who can penetrate and create something off the dribble on their own. You don't have a roster of guys with that skill set. And so what happens is you end up late in games. Teams are packing the paint. They're not going to let you drive. Or they may even just go to an all-out zone. You're stuck with a group of players who have to a degree, a limited skill set, and they're going to be passing the ball around the horn and what have you. So I think with Coach Anderson, and I said this before, when you don't have a true point guard, when you don't have a way to naturally get offense, you have to become the point guard from the sideline in situations and call good sets in order to get the job done, because you were coming out of that timeout. That was a very disappointing play coming out of a timeout. I mean, you get a timeout, you get the clipboard, you got a chance to do things. You expect a little bit more. Really was disappointing. I expect better.
I don't know if it's TJ Cleveland, if it's Melvin Watkins, if it's Zimmerman, whoever it is, somebody on that staff or somebody else come in and just be the designated play drawer upper. I don't care what you do, but to me, Mike Anderson, the defense and effort and intensity, I see the improvement. I see where that is. But as far as play calling ability, at the end of the game, I've lost all my trust in Mike Anderson, the coach, at the end of the game to get a call in that works. 3 straight overtime games, 2 of the 3 you lose. One of them you get lucky because a 3 bounces off and the guy dunks it back at the buzzer. To me, that tells me all I need to know about his offensive abilities. Get somebody who can do it. We're joined right now on the phone line, Mr. Brad Caldwell. Brad, man, what's going on?
Do we have to talk about this?
I don't want to, so you change the subject, man. I'm good with it if you do.
Woo, man. Rough, man. I think I've decided I'm not watching any more road games.
I know I'm not.
It's just too much for me to face anymore. I just can't handle it. So I think I'm going to abandon road games and watch home games, and I think I'll be a little happier that way.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I had to take a nap, Weldon, Sunday or Saturday. I had to stop watching the game.
Really?
Take a nap.
How were you able to get your blood pressure down to take a nap?
I just had to close my eyes, grip my teeth. And I was frustrated, man. It was upsetting, Brad. I know you're about like
tweets. I saw your tweets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I've been the one that's beating the drum about Mike Anderson, and still, I still feel like when you look at the players that's on this team and the players that he's got coming in for next year, I think that you're still going to be better off than you are this year. And I know that we all hoped, and look, you can't pit it on anybody but Mike as far as you're in year 3 and you still haven't quite gotten it to the point that you want it to get to. Although I think that there are factors that are in that some of them are not under the control of Mike Anderson, but at the same time, he's the accountable one. He's the one that it comes back to. And so I think we're short on players. I know Jason Kilburn has pointed that out to me when I was excited about Razorback basketball and thinking that they were going to get there. Jason was the one pointed out, said, look, we're still short on guards, and he's right. We are. And that's the biggest difference in playing on the road and playing well on the road, is having a guy that can come in and be the floor general. And not only that, but other guys that can score off the wing as well. And right now, Arkansas just doesn't have quite all that. They just don't have it. And I was hoping that they did. Michael Qualls was a guy that had just showed big-time improvement. But, man, in SEC play, he's hit the bottom. I mean, the Kentucky game played all right, played okay. He's a guy that feeds off the energy of the crowd. But other than that, he hasn't played well in the SEC play. Harris has not been what we thought he was going to be. Hopefully next year he'll kind of develop into that player that we had hoped that he would be. But when you look at next year, you've got another Nick Babb coming in, a guy that's got a brother that had signed with an NBA team, so he's got some lineage there as far as being a pretty good player. I think he's a pretty good player coming in. You've got Beard coming in. I think you've got some inside help at least, another guy, another body, which we need, and Thompson. And then you've got Keaton Miles is another guy, 6'7" guy that's going to add some length. So, again, it's a process. Nobody wants to hear it because the football team's been bad. The baseball team started out number 1 and barely made the darn NCAA tournament last year. And it's frustrating, and I know that. But, it's coming. It's just not coming as fast as we'd like it to.
No, I completely agree. Mike Anderson, I've said it more than once, and I've tried to be as clear as I could, but I need to clarify. I'm not quitting on Mike Anderson, the coach of this team, and I just don't trust his in-game. He's been out-coached the last 3 games at the end, and he just got lucky once. I mean, I know that the things bounced his way against Kentucky, but he got a clinic put on him by Billy Donovan at the end of that game. And really, Georgia, in that game, Arkansas should have won the game. So long story short, I'm with you guys. I just saw too many guys who played pretty well in spurts during the non-conference cupcake schedule where they'd put up points here and there. And, Michael Quall shooting 19%. Where did that come from Arkansas's leading scorer? So far in SEC play, shooting 19%. It's just been frustrating to me to see how the team has looked so much different. Both games on the road were, pretty rough as far as that goes because I expected them to win both of those games. And to their credit, playing well at home against Florida and Kentucky, I think that, a lot of immaturity there, Weldon, when they can play so well at home but can't take it on the road. Yeah,
and Brad, I think, Mark and I, we've been talking about this before the show and during the show. I want to get your take on it. I think Mark and I agree that because this team, they're limited offensively in terms of a skill set, that maybe you do need to trickle in a few more set plays. Not a whole game full of sets because that'll bog you down, but just critical situations, end of half, end of game situations. Maybe Mike Anderson would want to do something more from the sideline, but then I question maybe that's just not his philosophy. Maybe he could do it. That's just against his philosophy. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that has been discussed at length all across Arkansas. That maybe it's time to throw in some set plays and get somebody where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there and get the ball to them. I think one of the biggest problems that Arkansas has right now is just the ability to get the ball to the person at the right time. And I think that is a basketball IQ thing. We don't have a lot of high basketball IQs on this team right now, and that's no good. When you look at Mike Anderson's best teams, and Nolan's best teams had a very strong floor general. Look at Pressey when he came in at Missouri. I mean, things just started rocking and rolling there in Missouri. I mean, he handled everything. He did everything on the floor, and the flow of the game was a nice flow. And I think that you'll see that. I'm telling you, Anton Beard reminds me a lot of Phil Pressey, a lot. And, he's a guy that was not really – I mean, he was a 4-star player, but a lot of people just kind of cast him off as a guy that was a kind of an also-ran. But since he's got on that North Little Rock team, I mean, he's been maybe their best player. And everybody – we heard about Kevon Allen and all of the other guys that are on that team. Everybody was kind of thinking he'd be the third. Seems like he's been the best player this year for that team. So I think that's a great sign coming in. But, yeah, I think that we need some guys that can get the ball to the players at the right time when it needs to happen, and a guy that can take control. At crunch time, we just don't have it right now. I mean, Fred Gully, he's played better than I expected him to play, and he's still just not quite on that level. And when you look at our guard play, our guards are just not there. I mean, right now, Arkansas needs so badly for Antoine Bell to step up and play ball because he's probably, at least of the young guards, is the most talented guard that we have, and he's just not playing all that well right now. And it's just frustrating to watch, and I know that everybody is starting to run out of patience, and nobody wants to be patient right now because it's so horrible in Arkansas land right now. I mean, it's just a fact. I guarantee you, if the football team, if Bobby Petrino was still here at Arkansas, and the football team had won, let's say 9 and 8 or whatever in the last 2 years, I guarantee the heat wouldn't be nearly as high on Anderson right now. But because the football team has stunk so bad back-to-back years, and again, baseball team's been so bad, and then here you are again, we're putting all our hope into the basketball team that we think, look, this is year 3, this should be better, and it's just not there yet. Everybody's getting upset. But my question to anybody who wants to let Anderson go, and I'm not saying any of you guys are.
Right.
But I'm just saying my question to anybody that would say, let's let Anderson go, let's go get somebody else. I don't know that we gain anything by letting Anderson go right now.
No.
It's been a revolving door since Nolan left, and I just don't think that it's going to help us any. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's a good point.
Maybe you can go out and get the guy, but we have seen that the basketball searches haven't been all that great for Arkansas in the past 12 years. What makes anybody think it's going to be any better now, especially letting a guy that I think a lot of people respected, Mike Anderson, get out of town?
No, I'm with you. I don't want to see the revolving door again. I'll give him the time to refine his system. Mike Anderson's not 65 years old where he's just setting what he's going to do forever. He's going to adapt, and he's going to make things happen. And I see guys coming in. I see guys like Bobby Portis making a difference already. So I'm with you guys. I want to give Mike Anderson the time to get the job done. I'm not saying that he needs to be fired by any means. Brad, can you stay with us through the break so we can talk NFL, or do you want us to just run through it right now?
Yeah, we can go. Please stay.
All right. Well, let's just do it. We'll take a break later. We'll push the break back, Maddie. Let's look at the NFL. Changing gears. I'm sorry, it's a rough transition, but we got to do it. Why don't you answer, Brad, our poll question today, CrossFit Russellville poll question? What jumped out to you about the AFC and NFC championship games? Was there anything about individual performances, games as a whole, that jumped out to you this weekend?
Well, here you are, and this doesn't happen very often. You got the two best teams playing in the Super Bowl, and that's something that jumps out to me right off the bat. You just don't see that very often anymore for whatever reason, so that's a big deal. I liked the toughness that Seattle showed against the 49ers. They got down early, and the 49ers looked like they were dominating that game early, and then the tide changed, and there was a certain mental toughness that the 49ers have, the Seahawks have, and the 49ers have it as well, that I think is invaluable. On the AFC side of things, it's the Broncos are all about Peyton Manning. And one thing that I am seeing about this team is their defense is getting quite a bit better than it was even a few weeks ago. So that's a great sign. And if you go back and look at the 2006 Indianapolis Colts that won the Super Bowl, they came in with the worst rush defense in the league into the playoffs, and want to say ended up in the playoffs. That run that they had was one of the best, if not the best, performance of a playoff team ever as far as a rush defense. And yesterday, the Broncos kind of did the same thing. They shut down the power running game of New England, which New England had been running all over people. And that's going to be a very interesting matchup for this Super Bowl, is the fact that, Seattle's run-first team, although Russell Wilson can definitely make some plays, their guy that totes the load is Marshawn Lynch. It's going to be very interesting to see how that Bronco defense lines up against Seattle in that rush offense, because I think that's going to be a big-time key to this Super Bowl, and I think this Super Bowl is going to be a very entertaining one.
I'll give my thoughts on this here in a little bit, but I'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about Richard Sherman. What were your thoughts about what he had to say last night?
Yeah, I know that I was not really taken aback by that. I don't remember exactly all the trash talk that was going on between him and Crabtree, but the guy just won the NFC Championship game on a play that he made. So he was very emotional at that time. Although I can say that there was probably not one Stanford grad in the whole entire country, or in the world for that matter, that was very proud that Richard Sherman was a part of that fraternity. I can promise you that much. But I don't make a whole lot of it. That's football. Football is an emotional game. And, he got a mic in front of him at a time he probably shouldn't have.
That's exactly the point that I want to make. Now, he did sound like an idiot with some of the stuff that he was going at. Michael Crabtree, I'll point that out here in a little bit. But the fact that they stuck a microphone right in his face after the game, knowing his personality, knowing that they just won a huge game and he hadn't come down from that adrenaline.
It's TV.
I know they did it on purpose, but it's just like people in the media and people that are reacting to this calling him a thug. That's ridiculous to me to call him a thug. If you can put a complete sentence together like you and I talked about before the show, you're not a thug. It's just he was passionate, he was upset, and he was I think he was sort of stupid in the things that he said, but it's neither here nor there. When you haven't come down from the adrenaline, for them to put a mic in your face, you get what you get.
Yeah. I didn't have a whole really have a problem with the whole sequence. I mean, you look at how it started. Maybe trash talk going on during the week. Sherman makes the play, gives Crabtree a slap on the butt. Crabtree reacts, which I didn't have a problem with Crabtree. You just lost in the NFC title game, and a dude that talks junk slaps you on the butt. He's not really telling you good game. He's trying to taunt you. So I had no issue with Crabtree's reaction. Richard Sherman's a guy who we know about his educational background. Obviously, you can't question that. He's just a guy with a huge chip on his shoulder. Richard Sherman hates everything and everybody. I mean, he doesn't like Jim Harbaugh. Remember, he played for him at Stanford, and there's a chip on his shoulder from there. He doesn't like anybody that lines up across from him. He invents trash talk. You may not even talk trash about Richard Sherman. He's gonna, in his mind, say you did just to get jacked up. He hates everybody. His mama. Yeah, he hates everybody. Put a camera in front of his mouth. Aaron Andrews is like, who was talking about you, in a trembling voice? Because he's like, people were talking about me. And she's like, what? Who was talking about you?
It wasn't me. Don't hurt me.
It was funny, but I didn't like it, but I don't really have anything against it. It's not a big deal.
All right, Brad, before we get you out of here, your preliminary thoughts on the Super Bowl. Who you got? Well, you can keep it if you want to keep it a secret and call us in later.
No, I can go with it. But number one, I started the year with the Broncos, number one. And, for a lot of the year, they've looked like the best team. But for the other part of that year, Seattle probably looked like the best team. So you really have the two best teams playing again. Really like that. You don't get that very often. I'm going to stick with the Broncos just for the fact that, again, you're seeing the Broncos shut down that run game, which is a big deal when you're talking about this matchup. And it's just hard for me to see Peyton Manning losing this one. Maybe I'm wrong, but this one right here cements the legacy. This one right here probably makes him the greatest quarterback of all time. He wins this game, this is it. This is the one that says he's the best ever. And, we might be watching Peyton Manning's last game.
Might be.
If he wins this game, it's very possible that he drives off into the sunset. I mean, There's been more talk about that lately, and it's actually kind of surprising to me, but there's been more talk about that lately, about him. This could be it for him than I really expected. So I'm looking at Denver. I'm going with Denver. I'm going to stick with them, and I think it's going to be a great ball game, and I think it's going to be in doubt in the fourth quarter. Now, I will say this. The weather could make a huge difference in this ball game. If there's snow showers, rain, and you're talking about northeast New Jersey, very cold at this time of year, I mean, that very well could play a huge factor in this game, and that's something that you have to watch for come Super Bowl Sunday.
Well, as long as it's not snowing or raining, like you said, playing in Denver for a little while now, Peyton Manning is sort of become sort of accustomed to that sort of cold. But we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Brad, thank you for calling today, man.
Thanks.
Brad Caldwell, I want to give you a comment that David Brown made here in the studio today before the show about Peyton Manning, who Brad pointed out that he could be the best of all time. He is definitely the best quarterback of our generation, if we can agree on that. If John Elway, I know we watched him play, but really he was kind of before our time, and he ended right about the time we started watching. And Tom Brady's won 3 Super Bowls. Interesting, they haven't won any Super Bowls since they got caught cheating, but I don't think that there's any debate that Peyton Manning statistically is the best quarterback of our generation. And I want to read you a quote that I wrote down from David this morning and explain my thoughts on Peyton Manning, and Weldon and I will talk about the AFC Championship game. Stay with us.
Over 69 years of treating you like family is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peter's Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 Today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the 4s.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
KRK4 Today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
Welcome back to an extended edition of the Sports Blitz on a Monday. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter. We've had a full show so far. Talked to Nick Mason, former Arkansas Razorback basketball player, about the Hogs. He did a very good job of giving us an alternate opinion to really kind of where we stand on some Hog basketball stuff. A little level-headed is the way I put it. And then Old School Baller and Brad giving us calls. Now we've got Jason Kilburn on the line. I told you it's a full house. We got a lot of stuff going on today. Jason, what's up, man?
Hey, how y'all doing today, man? Just enjoying the show, and just had to call in since everybody else was.
Awesome.
I know you said you had some thoughts on the Hogs basketball team. What's on your mind?
Let me ask y'all a question first. Okay, Mike, this is Mike Anderson's third year, and y'all everybody keeps on saying you got to give him more time. You got to give him more time. How many years is enough time to give him?
That's a good question. You want it?
It's a good question, and it's something that you can't really answer. You just have to judge based on progress and the fact that they go 10-6 last year in the SEC.
Right.
Was that what they were?
I thought it was
10-8 because
10-8. That's right.
10-8. That's what it was. 10-8.
Yeah, that's where Nick said 2 games over, and I thought it was 4. But yeah, it's 2 games. They were 2 games over 500 last year. They only won 1 game on the road. My improvement for this year was to either A, make the NCAA tournament. Doesn't look like that's going to happen unless they just come along real quickly. B, win some games on the road and, make market improvement there, because I know this schedule is tough. You got 2 Kentucky games, 2 Missouri games, a Florida game. You've got some tough conference games there. Or to at least, knowing that you've got that schedule, make some market improvement visually to me. Just let me see some improvement. And I think I've seen a couple of those things that I've asked for. So I'm not saying that there's a specific drop-dead point. I am to the point, Jason, where I am through with Mike Anderson on the offensive side. I don't like his offensive philosophy. I don't like the lack of identity. But I can't fault the guys for effort. They're playing hard.
And Jason, I'll go ahead and answer your question. To me, it's quite simple. I think we talked with Nick Mason earlier. He said that Mike Anderson would be safe after this year, and I think he will keep his job after this year. If he goes after year 4 and doesn't make the tournament, he's out. I mean, you go 4 years, which would, after next year would be 4 years of no tournament. He's out, no question about it. Then it gets into the conversation, Jason, that we had with Brad Caldwell in the previous segment. If you're Arkansas, this will be what closing on 15 years of failure at the head coaching position. Stan Heath didn't get it done. John Pelfrey didn't get it done. Mike Anderson will be a failed coach. I can't even imagine what kind of hire you could make. I mean, you have to get, the whoever the assistant coach is at Dover to come in and coach Arkansas basketball. Because, really, if Mike Anderson doesn't get it done, you can't make a good hire after 3 failed coaches in about 15 years. So, Jason, to answer your question, I think after next year, if there's no NCAA tournament, he's out.
I probably agree with that. And I've said before the season that I didn't think this was a tournament team, and I still think we're a few players away. And I said, before the season, my biggest concern was point guard, and we don't have a go-to guy that we can just get the ball to and have him, take him to the hole and create his own shot and make a basket. And Weldon, you make some good points there, and that if we don't make the tournament this year, which everybody's kind of assuming that we're not going to, unless we, get on this big run and that maybe the SEC tournament and get an automatic bid. But, if we don't go to the tournament next year, if we don't go to the tournament, that's going to be the big year of Kevon Allen, and what if he's got this great recruiting class coming in with Allen and, he maybe got that King McClure, the kid out of Texas, and he's got some other players. Are they still going to get rid of him then?
See, to you guys, this is where I want to address that. That's why I came with the opinion that I had as far as I don't have a timeline, because if I see improvement every year, I'm not going to fire him. But if after next year I can't put a drop-dead date to make the tournament, because like you said, he's got Kayvon Allen. There's Anton Beard comes in next year. What if he makes an immediate impact and you see that there's going to be good in the future? What if Bobby Portis says, I'm coming back for my 3rd year, want to play with Kayvon Allen, want to play with whoever they end up getting, whether it's a Malik Monk commits or something like that, and you've got just this great crop of talent coming in to the Arkansas program, and you see with your eyes that Mike Anderson's got it going in the right direction. Do you let him go? To me, man, it's scary.
It would be hard, and I agree with that point. I understand it. I just think, and again, those recruits you named, super talented. I'm not comparing the 2 recruiting classes I'm about to talk about, but understand John Pelfrey had the B.J. Youngs, the Kai Maddens, the Hunter Mickelsons committed, one of the better classes in years. They didn't pan out, but at the time we were pretty excited, still made the move. Mike Anderson, the new coach, was able to maintain those recruits. So you look at it this time around, because, again, understand what the temperature of the fan base and the program is going to be. We're going to talk about 4 years of not making the tournament. We think things are bad now. The fan base will be at an all-time high in terms of screaming for Mike Anderson. The criticism will be high. 4 years of no tournament. I think he will succeed. I'll just say I think he will succeed. I think he'll bring the recruits in and get Arkansas going. But it's going to get real dicey if after 4 seasons, no tournament, even if he can land a big recruiting class.
And I'm with you, Weldon. I think if we don't make the tournament next year, I think there's a very good chance that he's going to be gone, because that's going to be 4 years that he's had, his players into his system, and that's another thing, man, that I'm really frustrated about, is because it's been 3 years. This is his 3rd year of his head coaching at Arkansas, so he should have a good point guard in place. And, all of Nolan's teams, man, they're all about a good point guard play that can, be the team leader of the team, that can, really play good defense, that can break players down on offense, that can, create shots for the open shooters and stuff like that. And I think, the most frustrating thing with me is we still don't have that. And our best point guard is Fred Goley, and he's a walk-on right now. And I just think he doesn't have the players in place for his system to run, in which that comes back to his identity. And y'all were talking earlier about, and, he was saying that this team doesn't have that identity. With the fastest 40 minutes in basketball, or fastest 40 minutes, or whatever he says, that's his identity. We don't have that right now, and especially when we get on the road. But at home, we're a totally different team. I think we are the fastest 40 minutes, because the crowd gets into it, they get behind, those players get behind the crowd, they really start pressing, they start playing good defense. Their transition game is a lot better. It seems like they look up the court a lot more. But then when it gets into road games, it seems like when a team slows us down or something, we don't know what to do. And our offense philosophy is all it is just a motion offense. And Mark, you was even talking earlier about the play that we called a timeout and set up that play for Madden to shoot a three. That's 2 games in a row we've done that.
Yep.
Now, I've played a lot of basketball in my life, and if he draws up this plays and says, "All right, we're going to set a high pick right here for you." Now, if the guy switches, you take your man to the hole, or if you think you can, shoot over him, or whatever the case may be. If they don't switch on that, then there should be something else that you can do. What Madden should have done was when they switched that, the big man got on him. He should have, made a couple of dribbles or something, a crossover, and took it to the hole and try to get fouled and get to the line to make, free throws, or maybe if somebody else would have came in, he could have kicked out to a shooter or something. Anderson, I just don't know if Anderson's style is going to be successful anymore in this day and time, of just because of how the rules have changed. And I'm not down on Anderson. I think he's a pretty good coach. I just think his time, that whole 40 minutes of pressing and running gun is to the wayside now. I just think you've got to have a half-court offense and a good half-court defense, and I think there's more to it than just the run and gun, pressing up and down. That's just my take.
And this goes back to a point I made earlier in the show. And Jason, I don't know if you'll agree, but even going back to Mike Anderson's days at Missouri, I just think philosophically there's more differences between what he wants to do and what Nolan Richardson wants to do. I don't think Mike Anderson, in his heart of hearts, wants to sell out and press the living dog out of people. Even at home, when they're running it up and down the floor, scoring points, crowd is loud, even the press then looks really watered down compared to the junkyard sellout pressing style of Coach Richardson. I think the styles are similar, but I think they're different. I think we have to understand that even when Mike gets it the way he wants to get it at its optimum level, he still won't be an all-out, sellout, press, junkyard dog type team the way Coach Richardson's teams are, which brings up, can his philosophy work? I believe that the Coach Richardson style can work when you get some blue-collar IQ athletes in. Coach Anderson wants to be a little bit more half-court refined, still fast, but it's just a little bit different than Coach Richardson. That's the way I've always seen it.
I've got a question for you then, and I don't know the answer to this.
Go ahead.
When is the last time that a team that has went, up and down won the national championship?
Kentucky sort of runs it up and down, and they won it a couple of years ago. So that's
I think
one team.
I think Jason. Are you asking more like who is an all-out? Because we saw Louisville last year. Technically, their pressing team. Some of the Florida teams technically pressed. But are you asking about the whole 40 minutes? Because even Louisville, the Floridas, Kentucky last year.
I think Louisville compares.
That's the closest one. But I don't know if we've seen anybody, to Jason's question, I don't know if this is the point you're making, anybody just sell out and just press 40 minutes. Is that what you're asking, Jason?
Yeah. That's what it,
Well, part of it, though, I don't
think.
think.
You were talking about Louisville. They do it, get up and down, and they press a lot. But, man, their half-court offense, I think that's what the key is to this day in college basketball. You've got to have a half-court offense. You can't just go out there and run in motion offense and I pass the ball to the wing on the right. Well, I'm going to go set a pick for somebody on the left. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think you've got to have set plays where you run down here and be like, all right, we're running number one. The number one's going to be I pass here, and then I move here, and, somebody screens over here, and then we have a lob here, and all this stuff. I think you've got to have those set plays in this day and time.
No, I'm with you, Jason. Thank you for the call, man. Do you have a thought on the Super Bowl? Who you got winning?
It's going to be a heck of a game.
Yeah.
I think either team could win, but I think, and I know Seattle has a great defense, don't get me wrong, but I just think Denver has too many weapons on offense for Seattle to stop.
Man, I hope you guys are right. I hope you guys are right. All right, Jason, thanks for the call, bub.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, man. Jason Kilburn, always good to hear from him about the Hogs basketball team, and he was right, man. He has had several. We've had little come to Jesus meetings where he's been like, "Look, you need to calm your jets because there are some things that I don't see for this basketball team, and I have to take my hat off. They haven't been quite what I expected, but I do see some progress, and I think that they'll come around. They're not going to make the national championship game this year. They may not even make the tournament, but there are some things that I think that they can build on. Half-court offense is number one in my opinion.
We know there are times, Mark, where, let's be honest, you need to be calmed down sometimes.
I do.
We understand that. We're
That's
okay
true.
with it.
I go a little overboard sometimes. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm an emotional guy. Let's look at the AFC Championship game. We know you've been waiting with bated breath for this as we talk about Peyton Manning. David Brown made a quote earlier today, a friend of ours from here in the office. He said that Peyton Manning is the best ever by every mental measure. He made the point because Peyton Manning does what he does, not based on just having the laser rocket arm. Remember that commercial back in the day?
Yeah.
He doesn't do it based on being Drew Brees accurate. He doesn't do it based on having the mobility of a Steve Young or somebody like that. He does what he does between the ears. And then, he's got some physical ability. Let's not take it too far. He's got the ability to get his receivers in the right place, get them in the right play, deliver the ball, even fluttering sometimes. But between the ears, I don't know that we've ever seen a football player, or really an athlete, that has been as smart as Peyton Manning is, a coach on the field. He is the epitome of a coach on the field, and I've just enjoyed the greatest quarterback of my generation, and it's good time. It's good a time as any now to transfer into talking about the AFC Championship game. 32 of 43 for 400 yards for Peyton Manning.
Big time performance from Peyton Manning, and I agree with you on the conversation of his greatness. I think one thing about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, we compare them all the time. Peyton Manning is doing something different than any other quarterback. When you talk about all-time great quarterbacks, to me, he's more different, which sets him aside in terms of the way he plays. I think Tom Brady, his greatness, Tom Brady plays quarterback is about as great as you can play it conventionally. Peyton Manning doesn't play quarterback conventionally, which to me takes him to a whole different level. So that's why I look at the quarterbacks. But as far as the game, Denver was the better team. New England came in with a power running game. They punished Indianapolis Colts. Give the Denver Bronco defense credit. When we talk about the Super Bowl here in a second, I'm going to bring this point up. The Denver Broncos, the first 3 quarters of each of their first 2 playoff games, have given up a combined 3 points. They shut out San Diego for 3 quarters. They only gave up 3 points to New England the first 3 quarters. I know those teams scored points in the fourth quarter, but this Denver defense is hot right now. I have to acknowledge him and give them credit. Peyton Manning, he understands how teams are going to scheme him. He knows you want to get physical with his receivers. He knows you want to do these things. Thought he did a great job from a formation standpoint with rubs and picks and all different things against tight coverage to get guys open, shallow cross, high-low crossing routes. He did a great job. Speaking of which, one of the overtone stories, Wes Welker and his pick play against Aqib Talib, it's been talked about. Bill Belichick has come out and said he did it on purpose. He took him out on purpose. He didn't even hesitate about it whatsoever. To that, I don't agree that he was trying to take out Talib from a health standpoint. He was trying to pick him, and he did. He did the job. I don't think he was trying to take him out, though, but that was one of the overtones of this game. Denver deserved it, though. They were the better team.
I don't want to hear anything from Bill Belichick about anybody cheating ever.
Why, Mark? Why?
I made the point earlier. He hadn't won a Super Bowl since he got caught cheating. Yeah. And for a guy who, I have a lot of respect for the coaching ability of Bill Belichick. Don't like him at all. Otherwise, I got nothing for him. So Wes Welker making that pick, it's unfortunate that Aqib Talib got hurt, and it made a difference in the game. Demaryius Thomas, 7 catches for 134 yards and a touchdown, including several big catches down the stretch to end that game. Looking forward to the Super Bowl. There's so many guys for Denver. That's one of my pros, my positives for them going into the Super Bowl. But breaking down this game, Tom Brady, 277 yards, sort of unimpressive. Part of this, I have to say, is due to the injuries that that New England sustained. No Rob Gronkowski. Julian Edelman was your best receiver. That's tough because a guy like Danny Amendola, man, I'm very disappointed if you're a New England Patriots fan. I watched Danny Amendola last year and thought when he came in for Wes Welker, oh, Lord, he's a younger version of Wes Welker. He disappeared. So Tom Brady, now, all that being said, Denver's defense played very well, and the fact that they're playing so well without Von Miller, without Chris Harris, and Champ Bailey steps in and plays well at cornerback position there for Denver to get them to the Super Bowl, his first in a long storied career, Hall of Fame career. Too much going on the positive for Denver to talk too much about the negative.
Yeah, Mark, and this it brings me to talk about our CrossFit Russellville poll question about things that jumped out during the playoffs, the championship games, and I'm looking at this game. A couple of things. I already mentioned the Denver defense playing sensational. They're playing above themselves over a 17-week season. I don't want the Denver Broncos to be my defensive team, but right now that doesn't matter because they're just a hot defense. Tom Brady's play, yes, Denver did a great job, but it sounds like I'm about to take credit away from him. And the reason is Tom Brady missed some throws. Tom Brady's a big-time quarterback, one of the greatest ever. Missed some throws he normally makes. That stood out to me as well. And again, I already mentioned Peyton Manning's adjustment to how Denver defended them. You can't give the Sheriff a second chance. I mean, they got him up in New England. They gave him another chance to get it right. You know he's not going to mess up twice. And what's the result? 400 yards.
400 yards and a Super Bowl berth. I told you guys immediately after the game, I started wondering, immediately after the Seattle game, how is Denver going to win that game? You know the defensive backfield that Seattle's got, the guys, man, they've just got dudes who can go in the defensive backfield. And I wonder, and Denver comes out as, I think it actually started out, Denver was a favorite, then Seattle was a favorite, now Denver's a favorite. We'll see how the wagering goes that determines who is the favorite in the game. But long story short, this is a very evenly matched game. I've got thoughts on either side. To your point, earlier you just mentioned our CrossFit Russellville poll question and what jumped out to you this weekend. Seattle's defense is one thing that jumped out to me this weekend. The turnovers. We talked about Colin Kaepernick. He was the big difference to me. 3 turnovers in a game when you had a chance to win at the end. That was the difference in the game for the San Francisco 49ers. But as we move forward and look at the Super Bowl, I mentioned I don't know how that Denver is going to win this game with the fact that Seattle can run the ball so well. I hope you do. I've got positives and negatives, but I've mentioned Richard Sherman all day, and I can't keep putting it off. I gotta talk about what Richard Sherman said because look, I know Richard, I know you're watching right now because you've got nothing else better to do right now than to listen to the Sports Blitz. But I know you've heard me talking trash about you, and not necessarily trash. I said I didn't care because they put a mic in your face right after the game. But at the end of the day, Richard, you're talking about how bad Michael Crabtree is. You're talking about how he's second rate. And you're talking about how he's crap and you're great and I'm the best. Dude, I don't know if you realize it or not, but when you downgrade how good the guy you're covering is, you're downgrading yourself. If you talk about how great he is, and then you say, but look what I did, then you're showing how good you are. But when you're downgrading a guy for no good reason, just because you win, you're just making yourself look like an idiot as far as what you're having to say. It just takes away from what he did, and I don't understand it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Richard Sherman, and I said overall I don't really have a big problem with. I agree with your sentiment though in terms of downgrading your opponent, which makes your accomplishment look a little bit smaller. Jay Billis often brings that up when crowds chant overrated after an upset or something at home. Like, why are you chanting overrated? You're just downgrading what your team accomplished.
Exactly.
So, similar mindset. But as we look at the Super Bowl, Mark, I understand as a Denver Bronco fan you're concerned about what they may be able to do against Seattle. But in the end, I'm going to be able to tell you why the Denver Broncos do have a chance to win the Super Bowl. I'm able to tell you that.
Go for it.
You want me to go now?
Do it.
I was make sure we weren't about to head out here.
No, we're good. I just need my charger. My computer's about to die.
Oh, well, that's a problem. That's a problem. All right. The Seattle Seahawks, and I talked about this before, they play a relatively simple coverage defensively. They play a lot of 3 deep, straight cover 3. I've already been over how it's played. Free safety in the middle, 2 corners, and the outside deep thirds. You have your linebackers on the weak side, strong safety on the strong side, roll down to cover, curl to flat. The Seattle philosophy is we're so good, we're so athletic and talented, we don't have to do a lot of exotic things. We don't have to do like Bill Belichick's done to Peyton Manning over the years. We don't have to mix up a lot of stuff.
Confusing.
We're just good. We're going to line up in our cover 3, and we're going to assault you at the line of scrimmage. And Earl Thomas is the best free safety in football, not even close. We're going to leave him back there, and we got it. All right, that's fine. But you're giving Peyton Manning 2 weeks to look at the same thing. So from a schematic standpoint, I'm not worried about the Broncos at all. I expect the screen game, which is what you do to put pressure on that type of defense, the lateral screen game to be in full effect. Some of the things we saw against New England as far as roving guys off, I expect that to be in full effect. And yeah, the Seattle defense will have an impact in terms of making it difficult on Denver. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not saying Denver's going to score 40 points. It's going to be a back and forth challenge. My next point are the Seattle pass rushers, who they're very athletic. They're very good. They also benefit from the fact that offensively, when you're up in CenturyLink Field, you get off the ball a half count late because you can't hear the snap count.
Yep.
Really helps those athletic pass rushers. The 12th man's going to be 3,000 miles away. The Denver defense, I've already talked about how hot they are. Right now, the Seattle offense is not out of the woods. They still don't generate big plays consistently. Russell Wilson pulled a Johnny Manziel and threw a deep pass to help complete it. But other than that, they're still not generating big plays. You can still sell out on the run. And in a game in which I think the Seattle offense is going to have to score some points because their defense can't do all the work against Peyton Manning, a little bit of pressure on Russell Wilson to score some points in this game. Overall, I think it's going to be a back-and-forth game. I understand why you're concerned as a Broncos supporter, but I'm also confident if I'm a Broncos supporter that they can get it done.
I'll give you a couple of points here, and we'll talk about this for 2 weeks. Obviously, we want to get your thoughts as well. We're about to be out of time for today's show, but we'll have you back on Wednesday at 11 to talk a little bit more about this and throughout the next couple of weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. But there are a couple points on either side that give me hope if I'm a Seattle fan or if I'm a Denver fan in the Super Bowl. One, I mentioned the defensive backs from Seattle. They've got, I talked about leading up to this game, Aqib Talib from the New England Patriots and how good he was. Well, they got 4 Aqib Talibs. They got 2 guys at corner, 2 guys at safety who are every bit as good as Aqib Talib, and they don't often miss tackles. So the screen game is going to have to be effective. You're going to have some effective blocking out of your wide receivers. But on the flip side, you've got so many guys from Denver who can make a difference out of the receiving core that Peyton Manning has to go to. It's going to be tough to guard them all. It's going to be tough knowing that Peyton Manning, he'll audible them into a good play. He'll make the right read and throw it to the right guy most of the time. Turnovers will obviously play a big role in this game, whether or not a ball gets tipped here and there and intercepted, but whether Manning gets sacked or whether he just throws a bad pass, whether they confuse him. But to your point, they're not going to try to confuse him too much. A couple things that I think Denver has advantages in. You've got Demaryius Thomas, who Richard Sherman probably going to lock him up or try to, or one of the other ones. Then you've got Eric Decker on the other side. You've got a Wes Welker, and you've got Julius Thomas.
That's
I
right.
think those 2 guys are going to have to be big in this game. Haven't seen a whole lot of Wes Welker since a couple weeks back. Obviously, he's had the concussion issues, and he's easing himself back into the game. But he's going to have to play big. Julius Thomas is going to have to play big because I just assume that if Seattle's got these great corners, you're going to have linebacker safeties help on guys like Wes Welker and Julius Thomas that Decker and Demaryius aren't going to be the main go-to guys. I'm sure they're going to have their plays,
right.
But those other 2 inside are going to have to make their hay. And then 2 other things for Denver. I'll give them in alternating style here. Neutral field for Denver. Without wind, without weather, causing an impact there. Having a neutral field and the 12th man being 3,000 miles away, that's a plus for Denver, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
Because it takes away that advantage, that huge advantage. And Seattle has been terrible on the road this year. They've gone from, beating everybody at home to you don't know what you're going to get on the road.
Sounds familiar.
So, yeah, it sounds like the Arkansas basketball team. But then on the flip side for Seattle, you've got physicality that goes on the road with you. That ability to mess up timing and rhythm, which is what the Denver offense is predicated on. You've got an advantage there for the Seattle defensive backs and the Seattle defense as a whole. Marshawn Lynch, he's better to me than LeGarrette Blount by every measurable category. So he's going to have an advantage in that aspect. although Russell Wilson isn't as good as Tom Brady. So there you go. It's a back and forth. See, I can see how this could be a game. It's just, to me, looking at it, I'm sort of a pessimist. I'm going to be honest with you. If I go for a team, I think of every way they can possibly lose, and I don't know how in the world they're going to win. It's like Lou Holtz. I don't know how we're going to beat Navy. Well, you're a 40-point favorite, Lou. You're going to beat them. You're going to beat them bad. It's not quite that way for me, but I am sort of looking at it from the pessimist side. So I'm sorry, Denver fans. I want the Denver Broncos to win, so I'll just be honest with you. I'm not going to be objective. I will look at the Seattle side and tell you why I think they have a shot and why I think that they're a favorite. But looking at the other side, there's one more point for Denver. Peyton Manning. Don't have to say much else. They've got Peyton Manning, and Seattle doesn't.
Peyton Manning, 2 weeks to get ready. Look, when you see something coming, I'm a big deal on this as we close up shop here. When you can see something coming a mile away and you know exactly what's coming at you and you have the cerebral ability of a Peyton Manning, you may get beat by something, but it won't be that. It's going to be something different. And Seattle just roughhousing and going home with a Super Bowl trophy. I think they better figure out some other things to do if they want to beat the Broncos.
They're going to have to be better offensively. They're going to have to be every bit as good defensively. They haven't faced this is an offense in Denver who scored more points than anybody in history in a single season. So they're not scrubs. I don't want to downplay what they've done. Man, I'm looking forward to 2 weeks of preparing for this Super Bowl. We're going to be preparing. We're going to take down matchups. We're going to talk down every single thing you can possibly imagine over the next 2 weeks, and we're interested to hear from you too. Give us an email, give us a call. Mark at rivervalleyleader.com is my email. You can catch us both on Twitter. You can find us any Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the Sports Blitz. This has been a special 2-hour episode, but we'll be back on Wednesday at 11 o'clock with more Sports Blitz. Maybe we'll talk about the Hogs hiring a new defensive coordinator. Rumor has it now Memphis defensive coordinator Barry Odom is the new guy. We'll talk about our thoughts on him. I'm not too upset about it, and I thought I would. I was wanting a name guy. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Look at the Hogs' next game. I guess it's at Thompson Bowling Arena against Tennessee. Looking at 1-4, staring down the barrel of 1-4 in the SEC basketball slate. So we'll preview more Super Bowl stuff. We'll get to plenty of other stuff. It's Kevin Durant, the MVP so far in the NBA. Talk about plenty of stuff on Wednesday. So thank you for joining us today. For Weldon and Maddie and all our callers, I'm Mark saying so long. We'll be back at 11 o'clock on Wednesday.